Back on the F100 this week. Got some cool stuff to show you. Also, gonna go over the haul we made from Summit. Last week we were in Texas and we went by Summit to turn in our torque converter core. We picked up a transmission cooler and some plug wires, which we ended up sending back because they didn't fit with our headers, and a fuel filler cap, which I got to thinking, the one that came on the truck was kind of tall. This will certainly solve any trouble with the height that we have under our truck bed. And another neat trick is, it's a push-through cap. And it's from Tanks, which is the same company that made our fuel tank. One of the things I love about the new Fords, or newish Fords even, is they have the capless fuel filler, and I guess other manufacturers have it too, but I haven't had any cars that had it except for Fords. And I love the benefit of being at the gas pump and not having to take the cap off and set it somewhere or let it hang from the cord and maybe scratch your paint. So to be able to use something different on our F100, it's gonna be pretty dope. When I look at the clearance under our truck bed, we've only got about 3/4 of an inch or so above the frame rails, which is gonna be a big problem trying to use this neck. So when I found that online, I thought, how perfect could it be? A couple of things I really like about this is Tanks was smart enough to give you a backup ring, which is threaded. Of course, our tank already has the threaded plate welded into the back side, but if you are just cutting this into a tank somewhere on your own, or if you don't have these threaded sections, you can fit that underneath and install it in any tank. Now we've gained everything we needed to fit under the bed. Here's a little something only the people who follow Grease Monkey TV on Facebook have seen. That's right. Seats are done. The heat and cooling switch is mounted in a convenient location. It's easy to reach while you're in these seats. The color couldn't have been better to match these, so shout out to my boy Jared at Cali Customs OKC. Material is so soft. Man, I wish you guys, can you smell that? A couple of years back, I saw a 69 Camaro that my neighbor had built, and it was the first time I'd seen someone use one of these heat sink type transmission coolers, and I asked him how well it worked. He said it was great, and I thought, if it's good enough for those, it's certainly good enough for the trucks that we're building. One of the benefits of running this type of transmission cooler is it holds a lot of volume, so that's that much more transmission fluid that you're running through your system to stay cleaner and stay cooler. The main benefit that you may realize is you don't have to run those transmission lines all the way to the front of your car. It gets kind of troublesome to come from the front of this transmission and then have to form lines maybe inside the frame rail and then run it all the way up here and plumb it into the radiator or into a transmission cooler that's mounted on front of the radiator, because it gets awful busy up front. You've got heater lines, you've got your coolant lines, you've got wiring for fans, headlights. I mean, there's enough going on that radiator support to not have to deal with transmission lines if you don't have to, and you don't. Now, there's two of these inverted flare type fittings that go into your transmission. Typically how they're ran is a tube and a tube nut is screwed in there. You just do a double flare on this hard line and then thread it into this fitting. And at some point you'll have to convert this over to a rubber line so you can get around other things and then fasten it into the radiator. So I use this just as an illustration, but you can run down to your parts store or a hardware store. I got these from, I think, O'Reilly, and this is an inverted flare to barb fitting, and it's got actually a larger diameter through hole than the factory fitting that came in the transmission. And you can just thread that in place and then pick up some 5/16 line and put that over that barb and put a hose clamp on it. Don't be a knucklehead and cheap out on your transmission lines. This is a Gates hose that's made for transmission oil cooler. It's rated to 400 PSI and temperature, and of course it's the chemical resistancy that it should be. Now here's that important decision-making time of where to put that transmission cooler. Now, inside the frame rail is kind of nice. It's protected from any rocks, etc. But I'm probably going to end up rerouting this fuel line a little bit. And the exhaust, I think, is going to come in through here somewhere. So I don't want that transmission cooler in the way of all this going on. So I think it makes sense to put it on the outside of the frame rail, and it can just be mounted kind of up high and be protected from this body mount from the front tire, and there shouldn't be much debris to deal with there. When I'm marking where to drill these holes to mount this, I went ahead and mocked up where the hose was going to be, because you kind of want to be mindful of any structures that are behind here that you maybe can't get to with your wrenches, and make sure the hoses aren't going to be in a bind. Like say if you put these too close and it wouldn't go down this way, moving it back a little piece gives those hoses plenty of room. So that's a pretty tight space under the truck. So I think the best plan would be to go ahead and build the hoses at least on the end of the cooler, and put the heat sleeve on it and everything, and then all that would be left is installing the hoses against the transmission where there's a little bit more space. Always want to make sure that you put your fasteners in a direction that they'll be serviceable once this part is mounted. Alright, so that mounting part's done, and our hardware is in a place where it shouldn't interfere with anything. The other set's back here, so I think we're in good shape. These fittings that go in the transmission are inverted flare, so basically they seal with compression, but I still like to put a little thread sealant on there just as an extra precaution. I hope this is a better camera angle for you guys. Now what's left is to cut this hose. And while of course you don't ever want to cut it too short, you also don't want to have added length that'll end up just being in the way of, you know, other things like exhaust or these fuel lines. But I kind of like the way this looks here. Lays across the frame nicely. I think we'll be in good shape. That'll make a good fit. Now this heat sheath is an aluminum high temperature covering or shield, if you will, for any hoses or electrical wire. And this is a 3-foot section, so basically I'm just going to cut it in half and put one piece on each end of that hose so it'll protect it as it goes over the exhaust.
On here.
That wraps up that transmission cooler, and that thing looks really nice in there. And looks really nice under here. So that knocks a couple of more things off the list on our F100 project. And the next couple of things, number one, our wiring harness showed up from Speedway Motors, and this is the second one of these that we've used, so I'll probably do a quick review of that before we start pulling wire all over the truck. Also, I noticed that Holley invoiced me for the Terminator X today, so that should be shipping soon, which means we'll be able to start this beast up and hear it purr. So looking forward to that. Appreciate you guys watching, and we'll see you next week.